Science Beetle.
Hey, welcome back, students. In today's lesson, what we want to go ahead and do is cover significant figures. When we talk about significant figures, there are 4 general rules that you want to be aware of. The very first rule is going to be that all non-zeros are considered significant when you compare them to zeros. And the reason this holds true is because, well, when you look at a 1 versus a 0, essentially the 1 has a certain value associated with it, whereas a 0 does not. And this doesn't really seem very evident at first, but when you put it in context, for example, if we took a number like 10, for example, we know that the 0 here is going to be in the 1's place, and we know that the 1 is in the 10's place. And so when we look at it from within these kind of categories, we see that there is a value that we have of 1 associated with the 10. So what this is telling us is that we have 110 because of this, okay? But in the 1's position, we have nothing. There is nothing here, okay? So none. There's none, or rather no value. And so since there is no value there, it really does not have any meaning associated in the grand scheme of things. The only thing that the 0 is useful for in this particular example is that it holds the position so that we can make sense of the 1. And so in this particular case, in the example of 10, the 0 is actually a placeholder. So it really has no value. It's not really significant in terms of the actual value of the number that I wrote. And for that reason, the first rule identifies that all non-zeros are significant. And so that'd be the first rule. The second rule is going to be that any 0 that is found between 2 significant values is also significant. So any non-zero, any 0 between 2 significant I'm just going to write here significant, and I'm abbreviated significant. Maybe I'll just write it out. Okay. The third rule deals with numbers that you find at the very end of a number. For example, let's say I had 3.002, 0, right? Or rather, let me just, if we did it this way, the 0 here at the very end is going to be significant simply because of rule number 3. And rule number 3 says that any 0 so any 0 at the end of a number is significant only if, and here's the thing one, only if there is a decimal. And that's the only reason, or the only way, that this particular 0 at the very end is going to be significant. So in this particular case, if we actually count the numbers, the 3 is significant, the 2 is significant, and the 1 is significant. These two numbers here, we're going to get to those here looking at when we get to number 4. So for this example, probably what I should do is let me just write it over here so we don't lose it, 3.0020. And we'll come back to this number in a second. But for now, let me just write it this other problem down. So 320. So in this particular example, we know that 3 is significant because it's a non-zero. The 2 is significant because 2 is a non-zero. But the 0 in this particular case is significant because the presence of the period. Okay, so we see the period there. Because of that period, or that decimal, we know that this 0 is significant. So the total count here is going to be a 3 sig fig count. Okay, and so having said that, let's go and look at the last of the 4 rules. Rule number 4 identifies any numbers that are going to be at the very beginning of a number. So any zeros, or let me just put it right this way, any zeros to the left of the first significant figure, or significant figure, and this is the clincher right here, is not significant. Okay, an example of this, so let's say I had 0.0012. We know that the 2 is significant, we know that the 1 is significant, but any zeros to the left of the first significant figure, the first significant figure is going to be the 1. So that means that these zeros here at the very end are not going to be significant. So the count here is going to be a 2 count. And so I'm going to write that 2 sig fig count. All right? And so let's look at that number that we wrote before, just so that we can address it now. So this number over here, the 3.0020, and then we're going to say that this is an example that we're going to do. Okay. So in this example, how many significant figures do we have? Well, we know that if we look at rule number 1, all non-zeros are significant, so that means that the 3 is a significant number and the 2 is a significant number. Then we look at rule number 2. Any zero between 2 significant numbers is also significant. So this is a significant number, the 3 is a significant number, as well as the 2. And I've got 2 zeros here in the middle that are going to be significant simply because they meet the condition for number 2. That is that they are between 2 significant numbers, so it is. So this is going to be significant as well as that 0. Now let's look at the last one here. Any 0 at the end of a number is only significant if there is a decimal present. Well, since we do have a decimal present here after the 3, the last 0 is significant. Now we don't worry about the 4th rule simply because we don't have any zeros to the left of the first significant digit. So in other words, we don't have any zeros to the left of the 3. So here the total count is going to be a sig fig count of 5. And that's going to be the significant count there. And so there's going to be some more problems that we're going to be doing, and I'll do some more of those in the next section. But for now, go ahead and subscribe us, and we'll see you next time.